Hey guys, so today we are going to be talking about the mobilization for World War II and the efforts that were made on America's part here at home to ensure that our soldiers had a successful delivery in the war. So these are some of the things that we did in order to prepare for the war. So after the Pearl Harbor attack, we now had 5 million Americans that were ready to volunteer their time and their efforts to help the war, and they volunteered as soldiers. There were another 10 million that were drafted through selective service. So these are males that are drafted to the war. Remember that you are draft eligible upon turning 17, and the draft ends around the age of, I believe, 35. 18 million were working in war industries. So these were the people that were producing the goods for the help of the war effort. However, less than 25% hired African Americans. So although there was this need to get people to help with the war efforts, people still were not hiring as many African Americans as they should. Remember, this is a time in our past where there was a lot of racial tension, a lot of racism, and that didn't just go away through because of the war. People's weekly paychecks rose 35%. Unemployment falls to 1.2%. So remember that back with the Great Depression, unemployment reached about 25%. And at this time, it actually fell all the way to 1.2. So, of course, Hollywood was able to help people join the war by putting things into movies and different films and through radio that was able to encourage people to join the war effort. And that's exactly what they did. All right, rationing. So the Office of Price Administration, OPA, set limits on prices, keeping them manageable. So they wanted to slow down inflation. They also set up a system where households received rationing coupons, C-books, to be used for buying such scarce goods such as meat, shoes, sugar, coffee, and gasoline. So they basically put a limit on the amount of things that people were able to buy to ensure that there was enough left to help with the effort of the war and to send those to the soldiers in need overseas that were fighting this war. So it's important to ration things like sugar and gasoline because you need that sugar, you need meat to feed the soldiers and to make sure that their bodies are prepared for a war so that they're able to be successful. And gasoline is also needed because you have to power those weapons, power those tanks and things like that. Here are some propaganda posters that are encouraging rationing. So you can take a second to look at those. And propaganda was huge during this time. This was extremely important to get people, to persuade people to follow along with the things that we needed them to do in order to help the war effort. All right, the War Production Board said which industries would switch to wartime production. So mechanical pencils turned out bomb parts. So imagine you go to work and your job is to make mechanical pencils, and now you are making bomb parts. Bedspread makers were making mosquito netting. Soft drink companies were filling explosives. So you go and start working at Coke down in Atlanta, and soon you know that you are actually helping to fill explosives. The War Production Board also set a list of conserved materials. So they were making sure that people were saving iron, tin, paper, and cooking fat. Here are some more pictures and propaganda, once again, to make sure that our soldiers have what they need to be successful so that our country will continue to win this fight. Okay, a gentleman by the name of Philip Randolph called for African Americans to march at Washington, D.C. because he stated, "We loyal colored Americans demand the right to work and fight for our country." So he wanted to make sure that everybody had the proper equality to work and provide to help with the effort that way, as well as to fight for our country and help with the effort that way as well, because he felt like African Americans weren't given the right to do these things, and it was extremely unjust. FDR backed down, and he issued an executive order making discrimination in defense industrial hiring illegal. So he completely was able through this effort to ensure that the country was starting to integrate in some aspect. Like, we don't want to say full integration, that doesn't happen for years afterwards, but we wanted to make sure that he wanted to make sure that, you know, it was right. It was unfair that they were being discriminated against. They should be helping. These are also bodies that we need to help with the effort. And so I think that FDR really saw that, and he knew that we needed help. And so why are we being racist? Let's include these people. And that's exactly what happened. So here you have a picture of Mr. Randolph down here at the bottom. And then you see him over here with the president's wife, Miss Eleanor Roosevelt. Okay, something in our past that did happen is that because of what happened at Pearl Harbor, because of the bombings in 1942, FDR ordered the removal of 110,000 Japanese Americans to these relocation centers. They actually were prison camps, and so they would round up Japanese Americans and take them to these internment camps where they were to stay until the war was over. So 2/3 of them were born in the United States, and $400 million worth of their possessions were lost. So that we would literally just come pick them up and take them to these camps. They would lose everything, their houses, all of their belongings. And actually, what's ironic is that 2/3 of them were actually born here in the United States. They were American. And in 1944, the Supreme Court said that these camps were legal in the name of military necessity. So this is really crazy when you think about it, because we were fighting the internment camps. We thought that the internment camps were wrong that Hitler had. We thought that the internment camps that Stalin had were wrong, and yet we had them here in our own country. It's kind of ironic, and it's something that we definitely aren't proud of, and we shouldn't be proud of. Here are some pictures and newspaper articles as well to show you what was happening with the Japanese relocation. They would literally, like I said, round them up on these trains and put them over here into these buildings where they would stay. You see this gentleman looking through barbed wire. This woman is holding her baby. It was just an intense and crazy time. One of the efforts in the war that was extremely instrumental was that of women. So 6 million women went to work, and 35% of them were in the workforce in order to keep the economy running. And women in the war, the Women's Auxiliary Army Commission was never in combat, but they did help with the war front, and this was extremely instrumental. They stepped up, especially here in Marietta. There was actually a huge company and factory here that allowed women to go to work to help produce planes, and it was extremely instrumental in the war effort. And the factory was full of women. These women wanted to help the men, help the soldiers, and that's exactly what they did. And so their efforts were not done in vain. They really, 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 really helped. Of course, the photo on the left is extremely iconic. We can do it. The girl he left behind is still behind him. She's a wow. So there's all this propaganda to help hype up these women and motivate them to continue to do what they were doing, and they did. Okay, so Mr. Theodore Giselle, here is a clue as to who he is. I would not like them here or there. I would not like them anywhere. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam I am. Yes, Theodore Giselle is also known as Dr. Seuss, and during World War II, he was an active cartoonist and propagandist that helped to support war efforts. So we're going to go through some of the different cartoons that he made during this time. If you want to jot down some things on your notes, I would definitely want you to do so. So on the left, you see this was one saying that Germany was building an empire in Europe. On the right, the U.S. wanted to stay out of World War II. We wanted isolationism. On the left, the U.S. is all talk, no action. We wanted neutrality acts. If we don't do something soon, Germany and Japan will come here and take over, encouraging people to buy bonds. On the left again, the Lend-Lease Act was starting to get the U.S. involved, but not all the way. On the right, the attacks at Pearl Harbor finally woke America up from its isolationist nap. So it was time for everybody to wake up and get it together and realize what they needed to do. Sorry about that, y'all. On the left here, fly him out of the sky. Wanted more war mobilization, getting people involved. We wanted to produce as many goods as we could, as many weapons as we could to help make sure that we won this war. On the right, the gas you burn up in your car in one whole year would only take a light tank 653 miles. So this is encouraging people once again to ration. Rationing is huge. Okay, on the left, Japanese Americans weren't to be trusted. It shows that internment camps are necessary to make sure that they are not going against the United States. They are not helping the enemy. Over here on the right, wartime conversion of industry. So we've got to take these industries and turn them into things that would help make sure that we are helping with the war front. So let's forget what we know in the past. Let's change it and make it useful. And then the last one, racist industrial hiring practices. These are all things that Dr. Seuss and Philip Randolph helped to bring light to during the war, helping with mobilization and ensuring that our country was successful.